You know how people say an empty nest is the beginning of a second honeymoon? Yeah, that's a beautiful theory. In practice, it felt more like being locked in a quiet house with a ghost I used to know. Our son, Milo, left for the University of Sydney with the kind of excitement that only someone who's never paid a utility bill can manage. Eliza cried at the airport, long enough to draw sympathetic looks from strangers. I held her hand, kissed her temple, and told myself this was our new chapter. We'd made it. No more PTA meetings, no more soggy science projects. Just us. Two seasoned adults, finally getting the time we deserved. I was wrong, of course. What I thought would be a rekindling turned into a silent drift. Eliza, my wife of 21 years, began doing strange things. Not the kind of strange that sets off alarms, but the soft, haunting kind. Like seeing a room slightly rearranged and not knowing who touched it. She started spending a little too much time in front of the mirror. Not in a vain way. More like she was searching for someone she might have lost along the way, between diaper changes and budgeting spreadsheets. She bought books with titles like The Second Spring and How to Stop Being a Mom and Start Being a Woman. I found one in the recycling bin under a flattened box of cereal. Subtle, Eliza was not. Then came the flowers. She walked into the house one Tuesday evening with a bouquet of white freesias, the kind florists recommend when you want to look elegant but nonchalant. I asked what the occasion was. She said, "I just felt like it." I didn't push. I'm not a man who thrives on drama. I've worked in IT consulting long enough to know that 90% of fires put themselves out if you just give them a moment. But this wasn't a fire. It was fog. And it was creeping into everything. She started wearing perfume again. Not just any perfume, either. The perfume. The one from our first date. A heavy jasmine blend that made my car smell like a greenhouse for 3 days. It was nostalgic, sure, but also unsettling. Like opening a drawer and finding a love letter addressed to someone else. And then, the sex got better. Yes, that's supposed to be a good thing. But it wasn't our sex. There was urgency in her. Touch. Not passion. Performance. I could tell she was imagining someone else was watching, grading her movements. And that, my friend, does something to a man's head. I didn't accuse. I didn't investigate. I just filed it away under the mental folder labeled Things to Revisit If It Gets Worse. Then came the invitation. Not from her. From Eliza, yes, but through the lens of her new enthusiasm for culture. A jazz night at some place called the Glass Cat. A weird little cafe/art bar downtown that sounded like it served cocktails in teacups and had toilet paper made from recycled poetry. We went. She wore a deep green wrap dress, the one that hits her right at the curve of her back and makes waiters lose track of orders. I wore my standard black blazer and a smile that felt more like a contract than a mood. That's where I met him. Trevor, all caps necessary. Trevor Blaine, her new boss, oozed charisma the way some people sweat, constantly and without shame. Mid-40s, with that half-graying, perfectly messy hair that says, "I read Murakami and still lift weights." He spotted us from across the room like a hawk clocking a mouse, then walked over like he owned the lease on the joint. Because, as it turned out, he used to. "Lies," he said, all casual familiarity, the nickname hitting my ear like an ice cube down the spine. She laughed, head tilted back, hand on his arm. "You made it." I stood there like a museum exhibit. Husband, midlife edition. Note the creases and coffee stains. He shook my hand, firm and warm, like he was welcoming me to a dinner I didn't RSVP to. "Trevor, I've heard so much about you. That makes one of us," I wanted to say. Instead, I nodded and gave him the kind of smile I reserve for co-workers who eat fish in the break room microwave. The rest of the night was a blur of saxophones and shared inside jokes. Trevor knew the bartender by name. He knew the band's origin story. Hell, he probably designed the damn drink menu. Eliza laughed more in that hour than she had in the last 2 months combined. On the drive home, I asked, "So, that's your new boss?" She said, dreamy. "Isn't he something?" Oh, he was something. All right. That night, while brushing my teeth, I stared at myself in the mirror for the first time in a long time. There I was, 46, a little soft around the edges, predictable in every way, and suddenly aware of how utterly replaceable I might be. But I wasn't about to panic. I'm not a man who flips tables or sends angry texts. I play the long game. I listen. I watch. And above all, I wait. Because sometimes, the best way to win a game you didn't sign up for is to act like you invented the rules. You'd think the worst part of suspicion is the not knowing. It's not. The worst part is being right, but not right enough to do anything about it. You see things, little things, but none of them scream, "Here's your smoking gun." It's more like death by 1,000 polite smiles. After the night at the Glass Cat, things started shifting in that slow, deliberate way that makes you feel crazy for noticing. Eliza began talking about Trevor Moore, at first casually, like you'd mention a new blender that made smoothies just right. Then came the admiration. "He's brilliant," she said one morning over coffee, as if she were describing someone who'd cured a disease and not just scheduled a meeting without using Outlook. "He's just inspiring." I nodded, stirred my spoon, bit the inside of my cheek so I wouldn't say something sarcastic and regrettable. Not because I was afraid of confrontation. I just wanted more data. She started dressing differently, on Fridays. Not dramatically, just sharper. More attention to detail. Foundation blended to perfection. Earrings that matched shoes. And perfume, again, with the damn jasmine. I pretended not to notice, because when you notice, you alert the subject, and the moment they feel watched, the experiment changes. One Friday afternoon, she texted me, "Trevor got us tickets to a private Japanese woodblock exhibit at the Eastwood Gallery. Once in a lifetime. Trevor got us tickets, not me, not the team. Us, like they were a unit now." She followed it with a smiley face, the nonchalant kind, like it was just another Friday night, not an outing with a man who used to own an art cafe and smelled like imported tobacco and existentialism. I replied, "Sounds fun. Enjoy." She called me 20 minutes later. "You sure it's okay?" she asked. "I know it's last minute." "Go." "Sounds like your thing," I said, voice flat as a courtroom bench. That wasn't permission, that was bait. And she took it. That weekend, I did something I'm not proud of, but I also don't regret. Amazon. 2 mini voice recorders. The kind you can hide under car seats or in handbags if you're careful. Plus a cheap app that lets me monitor her phone location. IT consulting teaches you a lot of things. Paranoia just turns it into a practical skill set. The first win came quicker than expected. A message from her to her old college friend, Laura. "He makes me feel like I'm 30 again, like I don't have to apologize for wanting more." Now, that could mean anything. But paired with the recent wardrobe upgrades and jazz nights with teacup cocktails, it didn't sound like someone enjoying a mentorship. I waited a week. She told me she had another work dinner. Some new firm they were pitching, apparently. I smiled, nodded, and told her I'd be out of town for a conference in Brighton. 2 days of PowerPoint and men who quote Simon Sinek. What I actually did was book a room at the Hawthorne Suites, directly across the street from the only restaurant in town with a reputation for 5-star duck confit and discreet back rooms. Nicolette's on Park. I arrived an hour before her reservation. Sat by the window. Ordered a whiskey I didn't want. Watched. At 7:06 p.m. she arrived. Hair curled, lips red, dress navy blue, sleeveless, the same one she wore to our 10th anniversary dinner. She looked stunning, and not for me. Trevor arrived. 7 minutes later, wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my suit collection. They hugged. Not like coworkers, not even like friends, like people who'd spent the last week dreaming about this moment. They were sat in a corner booth, dimly lit, candle between them. He leaned in when he spoke. She touched her necklace like she always does when she's nervous or excited. I couldn't hear what they were saying, didn't need to. I took a photo with my phone, just one, not to confront her with, just to prove to myself that I hadn't made this all up, that my gut still worked. Back in my room, I stared at the photo while she texted me. Long dinner but productive. See you soon. That heart emoji felt like a slap wrapped in silk. The next morning, I went for a run, trying to shake off the image of Trevor's hand resting too long on her back. Tried to remind myself that people make mistakes, that marriages go through seasons, that this didn't have to mean everything, but then Trevor called me. Yes, called me. I didn't even know he had my number. Lucas! Hey man, hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I stood still in the middle of the running trail, heart thumping in my ears. What's up? I said, trying to keep my voice even. Just wanted to say, I really admire your relationship with Eliza. You guys have something rare. I hope we're not crossing any lines with all the work dinners and creative stuff. She's brilliant, man. You should be proud. The kind of call that isn't a call. It's a shot across the bow. I'm always proud, I replied. And I trust my wife. He chuckled. Good. That's good. We all need that trust. Anyway, listen, I've got 2 tickets to the Grand Slam finals next weekend. Front row. Can't buy these anywhere. Thought maybe you and Eliza would want them. Another gift. Another test. I said I'd think about it, then hung up and added a new folder on my desktop. Trevor, Phase 2. Something was building. I could feel it, and I wasn't about to be the last guy in the room to realize the fire alarm wasn't just a test. I've always believed that people don't fall out of love. They grow blind to what they had and start seeing shadows of what they think they're missing. That's all Trevor was. A shadow. A glossy, well-dressed mirage with expensive cologne and just enough pseudo-intellectual quotes to seem profound. But I wasn't about to compete with a fantasy. No, my job was to make sure that fantasy crashed into reality hard enough to leave a mark. After his friendly little "we're just friends" phone call and the offer of those impossible-to-get tennis tickets, I knew one thing. Trevor wanted me quiet, which meant he knew I was watching, or at the very least, he suspected. The arrogance it takes to call the husband of the woman you're circling like a vulture and offer him sports tickets, that's a man who thinks he's already won, so I accepted them. Wow, Eliza said when I showed her the envelope. He actually gave them to you? I shrugged. Guess I'm likable. She paused for a beat too long, then smiled that same rehearsed smile she'd been perfecting for weeks. Should be fun. But I didn't go. Of course not. The day of the final, I claimed I had a sudden call with a client in Perth. Time zone issues. Unavoidable. Take someone else, I told her. Maybe Laura? She hesitated. Maybe. I checked the tracker that evening. Her phone never left the downtown area, and she sure as hell wasn't sitting in a tennis stadium. That night, I cooked myself a steak, poured a glass of red, and printed off a few things. Copies of receipts, phone logs, screenshots. I wasn't going to use them? Not yet. But like any smart man in battle, I wanted a loaded chamber before I pulled the trigger. The following week, Eliza returned to high-alert wifedom. Breakfast in bed, spontaneous back rubs, a sudden urge to organize our closet. It was like living with a Stepford wife who forgot how much I hate eggs with runny yolks. I played along. Because that's the thing about people lying to you. The longer they think they're fooling you, the more careless they get. And I wanted her careless. That's when I learned about the corporate dinner. It was Wednesday morning, and she was buttering toast like she was applying primer on a masterpiece. Calm, focused, a little too careful. We've got this thing. Friday, she said casually. Work dinner, whole team's going. Trevor's arranging it. Sounds fun. I replied, sipping my coffee. Where? She blinked. It's at the Lancaster Hotel. Rooftop space. Should be nice. I nodded. Didn't ask who'd be there. Didn't ask if spouses were invited. Just smiled and folded. My newspaper like a man with absolutely nothing on his mind. But I already knew what I was going to do. Friday arrived. She dressed like she was going to seduce an award. That navy jumpsuit I hadn't seen in years. The one with the open back and tiny silver buttons that ran down the spine like piano keys. Hair done, lipstick subtle but lethal. You sure you don't want to come? She asked, more out of obligation than hope. I'm good, I said. Have fun. She left at 6:48 p.m. By 7:30, I was in a tailored navy suit with cufflinks she gave me for our 15th anniversary. Booked myself a room at the Lancaster under the name Charles Vance. Nice little touch, don't you think? At 8:05, I entered the rooftop lounge. It was a beautiful setup. Hanging lanterns, string quartet, waiters with champagne flutes and practiced smiles. A fake utopia for fake people. I spotted them easily. Trevor, standing too close. Eliza, laughing, too loud. His hand on her elbow, hers on his chest for just a second too long. No one else from her team in sight. I waited until they were mid-toast. She was holding her glass, looking at him like he just invented warmth. That's when I walked up, slow, deliberate, without a hint of rage. I wasn't here to scream. I was here to end a story. Eliza, I said. Trevor. They turned. Her face drained the moment she saw me. Trevor gave a grin like he'd just been handed a puzzle he hadn't studied for. Lucas, this is a surprise. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. Sealed. Simple. No dramatics. What's that? Eliza asked, her voice tight. Something overdue, I said. It's a divorce agreement. Don't worry, nothing nasty, just facts. Time, dates, signatures. You're free now. Her glass slipped a little in her hand. She didn't drop it, just trembled, like a violin string plucked too hard. Wait, Lucas. Trevor stepped forward. Hey, man, let's not. I held up a hand. No, you don't get to talk. You were never the point. You were just the match. She was the one holding it. He looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find the right words. Probably the first time his silver tongue failed him. I turned to Eliza. You think you lost me recently? Truth is, you lost me the moment you started using my kindness as camouflage. Then I walked away. Left her standing there, hair perfect, mascara unmoved, but everything else shaking beneath the surface. Behind me, I heard nothing but the clink of a glass being set down, and one very stunned waiter whisper, "Damn." Later that night, I sat in my car 2 blocks away. Took a deep breath. No tears, no breakdown. Just the clean clarity of someone who finally let go of something they'd been white-knuckling too long. The fog had lifted. The game was over, and I'd walked off the board without flipping it. After that rooftop evening, I expected silence. The kind that creeps in after the storm and makes you wonder if the walls will ever stop echoing. But silence wasn't Eliza's weapon of choice. The very next morning, my phone lit up at 6:12 a.m. We need to talk. By 6:13, she was calling. I didn't answer. Over the next week, she tried everything. Texts that read like confessions, emails that swung between guilt and nostalgia. One. Handwritten letter left on my doorstep sealed with the same perfume she used the night we met. Jasmine. Of course, she even showed up at my office once, unannounced, holding a box of homemade oatmeal cookies like that was going to erase the fact she'd emotionally packed her bag 6 months ago. My assistant, bless her, said I was in a call with New Zealand and led her to the lobby where she sat for 23 minutes before giving up and leaving the cookies on the reception desk. I didn't touch them. Neither did anyone else. They sat there like a tribute to something expired. It wasn't that I hated her, I didn't. It's hard to hate someone you built a life with. But I'd finally realized the woman I loved was long gone. She left quietly, gradually, piece by piece, until what was left was someone I didn't recognize, and worse, didn't respect. I moved out within 2 weeks. Got a short-term rental near the river. Small place, modern kitchen, big windows. The kind of space that feels empty in a clean way, like a reset button. I started cooking again, running again, thinking again. 6 months later, I met Alice. It wasn't cinematic. No accidental touch of hands in a bookstore, just 2 adults on. The same dating app. Both too old to pretend they didn't know what they wanted. She was 38. An interior designer with a daughter in middle school and a weakness for over-decorating Christmas trees. First date was tacos and a trivia night. She beat me by 20 points and never let me forget it. Alice had this calming presence. Not the fake Zen kind, but the real sort that comes from having survived her own hell and choosing to laugh anyway. She didn't flinch when I told her I was divorced. She just nodded, sipped her beer, and asked if my ex-wife had good taste in wine. Her daughter, Liv, was 11 going on 25. Smart, sarcastic, addicted to sketchbooks and oversized hoodies. We clicked in a way I didn't expect. One day, she handed me a drawing of me as a superhero, complete with a cape made of spreadsheets and a utility belt with sarcasm bombs. I framed it, then came Milo's graduation. It had been nearly a year since he left for Sydney, and though we kept in touch, video calls, the occasional, "Dad, how do I file taxes?" text, this was the first real milestone since the divorce. He'd asked us both to come. Politely, carefully, like someone trying to seat a grenade and a matchstick on the same dinner plate. We flew in 2 days before. Alice and Liv came with me. I didn't ask Eliza about her plans. Didn't care. But I knew she'd be there. Of course she would. The ceremony was at this massive auditorium, all high ceilings and uncomfortable folding chairs. Milo looked incredible, tall, confident, wearing that blue sash like it meant something cosmic. When they called his name, I clapped so hard my palms stung. Afterward, there was the mingling, the photo-taking, the inevitable run-in. I saw her across the crowd. She was standing alone, holding a gift bag with a ribbon that looked like it took her 45 minutes to tie. Her dress was elegant, but she looked tired. Not physically, existentially. There was a heaviness behind her smile, the kind you can't hide with makeup or posture. That weight you carry when you realize you bet on the wrong version of yourself. She saw me, saw Alice, saw Liv holding my hand, half hiding behind me, watching curiously. For a second, Eliza's face crumbled. Just a flicker. Just enough. She started walking over. I turned slightly, pretending not to notice. Alice leaned in and whispered, "That her?" I nodded. "You good?" she asked. "I'm better," I replied. Eliza reached us, standing there with that same forced poise I'd seen at the rooftop, only now stripped of its sheen. Her voice was soft. "Hi." "Hi," I said. She looked at Alice, then at Liv, who offered a polite nod like she'd been coached by the Queen of England. Eliza didn't know what to say. She didn't congratulate Milo, didn't ask how I'd been. She just looked at me like she was asking a question without words. I gave her a smile. Small, peaceful, final. Then I turned to Alice. "You ready to go?" "Yeah," she said, looping her arm through mine. As we walked away, I felt Eliza's eyes on my back. Felt the weight of everything she wanted to say, but knew would change nothing. And in that moment, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt done. There's something beautiful about being done. Not bitter, not broken, just released. Milo met us outside, gave Liv a high five, hugged Alice like they'd known each other for years. Then he turned to me and said, "I'm proud of you, Dad," I laughed. "You're the one with the degree. Still, you're killing it. Maybe I was. Maybe for the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was living. And as we walked toward the parking lot, sun setting behind us, I realized something. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger or justice. It's peace. The kind that leaves the other person wondering what they lost and why you never looked back.